live and direct from the Golden State. It's intelligent talk media, the Denice Gary Show. Now, here's Denice Gary.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Denice Gary Show. It's just a privilege and an honor to be with all of you today. I have a very special guest that we're going to begin the broadcast with, Philip HANEY. Ladies and gentlemen, Philip HANEY was a frontline officer, an intelligence expert, and founding member of the Department of Homeland Security. This is a man that walked in on the first day and began his call of duty to help secure the national security interests of the United States. Philip HANEY, welcome to the Denice Gary Show.
Thank you very much.
You are so welcome. I wanted to begin with something in your book, and when we talked the other day, I believe I mentioned to you something that I looked at on page, as reading your book, page 127. Ladies and gentlemen, you should be able to see, I believe my producer has put up the photo image of the front cover. See something, say nothing. I'm looking at page 127. Mr. HANEY, you talked about the Muslim Brotherhood front groups here in the United States. Would you help the audience before we, begin to tackle this particular issue of the Muslim Brotherhood here in the U.S.? Would you explain to the audience why the Muslim Brotherhood is a threat to the American people?
Well, let's start with the Constitution.
Okay.
According to the Muslim Brotherhood's own motto, they say that Sharia law is their constitution.
Right.
So right there you have a direct conflict with Article 6 of the Constitution, which is that the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And I know that a lot of times when we talk about Islam and groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, we tend to approach it from the direction of, flat out terrorism. But there's more to the threat than just the overt violent actions. There's a subversion, what I call the saturation of like soaking water into a sponge. Mm-hmm. And apart from the religious aspect of Islam, you have a civil aspect, a legal aspect that has to do with marriage, divorce, business, inheritance, all the other branches of civil law that are also included in Sharia. And that is the point of conflict between the Constitution and or civil and state, local and state law, mm-hmm. is that it's a violation of those laws. They're incompatible. So right there is really the main point of conflict between implementation of Sharia law and following the Constitution. So that's the first level threat. And then you have these other affiliations with groups like Kern, Islamic Society of North America, North American Islamic Trust, and Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America. The reason why they're called front groups is because they don't actually have the name Muslim Brotherhood in their title. Yet they come right out of the mother organization called the Muslim Brotherhood, just like Hamas is the branch of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. That's actually their formal name, but we all know of it as Hamas. And unless you look into it a little bit, you don't realize maybe that they're connected, but they are. And that's the same thing with these front groups that are operating here in America. And the third point of proof, to answer your question, is this was already brought out in federal court, irrefutably proven by the Department of Justice, culminating in November of 2008, and showed that the very groups that we hear of so often, CARE and ISNA, ICNA, and the rest of them, the alphabet soup, are all front groups for the Muslim Brotherhood, and that they're directly related to Hamas. So it's like an electrical circuit. They're all connected, or you might say that Muslim Brotherhood is the sun of the solar system, and these other planets with their moons, they're all circulating around the sun. It's kind of like that. It's a structure, both here in America and then international. And the Muslim Brotherhood is the sun of the solar system, and then you have all these other planets and asteroids and everything else that circles around it.
Okay.
So that's why they're called front groups.
Okay. All right. So, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, ISNA. Philip Haney referred to ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America. So there's CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, ISNA, the National American Islamic Trust. There's numerous groups that are operating here in the United States. And I thought it was interesting that President Trump is the first president that has showed an interest in designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. You know, John Bolton, our National Security Advisor, Mike Pompeo, is our Secretary of State. They are both standing with the president on this. And I just wanted to ask you, I know we hadn't talked about this, but I did want to ask you, as somebody that was an official in the Department of Homeland Security, where you came down on this issue. I'm just curious. Are you with the president and our National Security Advisor and Secretary of State on designating the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization?
Absolutely. That's the group that I worked on when I was active duty.
Okay.
I started working on the Muslim Brotherhood in around 04, 05, right in that range. The very first organization I ever tracked when I was in intelligence was CARE.
Okay.
And submitted information actually to the Department of Justice lawyers when they were conducting the trial in Dallas, all the way through from 07 through the completion of the trial in 08. And so absolutely I'm in favor of it, because I know about as much about the Muslim Brotherhood in America as just about anybody, simply because I worked on it so much.
Okay. And the Muslim Brotherhood now, ladies and gentlemen, I used to have top secret clearances. It was a while ago. But I wanted to ask you, Mr. Haney, people like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, these freshman congresswomen representing Michigan and Minnesota respectively, these ladies are standing with the Muslim Brotherhood. They're supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm sure that you heard the reports that Rashida Tlaib put together an entire delegation of Muslim Brotherhood leaders in the United States. And they were there in Washington, D.C., knocking on the doors, particularly of Democrats, to convince them and sell them on the Muslim Brotherhood's agenda. Now, if the president moves forward and designates the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, this is going to put sanctions and restrictions, including travel bans and other limits, on the Muslim Brotherhood's activities. How do you think that's going to affect people like Rashida Tlaib, Rashida Tlaib and Representative Ilhan Omar?
Well, not only Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Andre Carson,
right,
who actually speak literally at CARE events on a regular basis,
right,
but about 100 other members of Congress. And I haven't updated the list since the last election, when the House, the midterm elections,
right,
but the last time I looked, it was at least 100 members of the House and or Senate who have taken campaign contributions from one or another of these Muslim Brotherhood front groups, particularly CARE and quite often Muslim Public Affairs Council. And not only that, but they have photo ops galore. They speak at mosques that are Muslim Brotherhood mosques, and the way you can often tell that is the name of the mosque will be something like Islamic Center of, let's just say, Kansas, or Islamic Center of Arizona. Any mosque that has a name, society in it, or center in it, which is most, will be affiliated back. You can track them back to the North American Islamic Trust and another front group for the Muslim Brotherhood.
Let me just interject real quick. Right here in Kern County, we have Islamic centers, and of course Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego County, San Francisco County, San Jose County. All these counties, ladies and gentlemen, have these kinds of groups right there in right here in California. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to mention that to the audience. Go ahead, sir.
Well, go online with CARE LA
Right.
website, and they tell you point blank they intend to move into the valley, meaning San Joaquin,
Right.
and establish a stronger presence throughout the entire Southern California.
Right.
They just made this big announcement not weeks ago. In fact, I think when you and I met about a month ago, that they had just made that announcement.
Okay.
So they're very open about what they intend to do. But so you have several arenas of influence. You have campaign financing. You have influence, like the one that you mentioned, where individuals that are openly affiliated with these Muslim Brotherhood front groups are literally walking in and out of the offices of members of Congress. And then you have members of Congress who are speaking at various events and or making public appearances and or passing legislation that favors them, or in my particular, to me the most serious example is the executive branch allowing members of the MB to be on committees and steering committees and actually have influence on policy,
Right.
which is what happened under the Obama administration. That's when that's full saturation at that point. They have more authority than law enforcement officers at that point.
I wanted to ask you, Human Rights Watch, they're a leftist organization. Human Rights Group, Human Rights Watch, Laura Pitter says that she's lobbied the Trump administration to avoid making the Muslim Brotherhood designating that group as a terrorist organization because she writes that it will harm the participation of Muslim groups in the democratic process. I don't believe that. Would you like to respond to that, sir?
Well, let's go back again to the precedent that was set with the Holy Land trial. The reason why that was so important is because there was a whole network of Muslim Brotherhood organizations that were raising money to support jihad. We're not talking about freedom of speech or religion here. We're talking about overt support of a globally designated terrorist organization, which they just happen to also be the parent of. In other words, Hamas is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. So I'm all for human rights, civil rights and civil liberties and privacy rights.
Sure, I am too.
But not when it interferes with the Constitution and puts us at risk.
I would just like to add to what you're saying, is that, my contacts in Egypt and Christian Egyptians here, that many of them are my students, actually. The Muslim Brotherhood, ladies and gentlemen, under Mohammed Morsi, who was the president of Egypt for a period of time when the Muslim Brotherhood, half the Egyptian population supported the Muslim Brotherhood and was elected. I think it's important, ladies and gentlemen, that you know that there were reports of, in fact, Sky News, I don't know if you saw it, Mr. Haney, but Sky News for just a moment was showing crucifixions and the kinds of individuals that have been tortured by the Muslim Brotherhood that represented more secular Muslim groups and Christians. And from everyone I've spoken to on the subject, the kidnappings of Christian children, particularly the girls, so they could be sold into the sex slave trade, and boys as well. But there was a tremendous rise in crime and in brutality and torture during the Muslim Brotherhood's reign of terror. And I thought it was interesting that after the current president of Egypt, Abdel al-Sisi, when he talked to President Trump when he was just here, what was that, about a month ago? That President Trump noted then that he thought it was important to designate the Muslim Brotherhood because, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, it's illegal in Egypt to be a part of that group or to be involved and promote Muslim Brotherhood activities. But I don't know, did you want to comment on that, Mr. Haney?
Well, not only in Egypt, but several other countries in
Yes.
the Middle East.
Yes.
And let's go back even further to the person named Ayman al-Zawahiri. A lot of us know that he was the co-founder of what we know of today as Al-Qaeda, and that also he's founded a new branch of Al-Qaeda called Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent, which is actually the largest coalition of jihadi groups in the world now, centered in the Indian subcontinent. Ayman al-Zawahiri is a Muslim Brotherhood person.
Right.
So everywhere you look, there's the overpowering influence of the Muslim Brotherhood in the global Islamic movement, which we also have to keep in mind. That's exactly what the Muslim Brotherhood is a global Islamic revival movement. To revive what? The Islamic Caliphate.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen.
And we're not an exception to it. That's the big point.
Right. The caliphate, ladies and gentlemen, i.e. the theocracy in which an Islamic leader would control an empire, was ended following the Ottoman Empire's destruction after World War I. And of course, Ataturk, who was involved in the genocide of Armenians and the massacres involving the Christian Greek population there in Turkey, he ended the caliphate. So Muslims, ladies and gentlemen, in the Middle East and around the world are hoping to reestablish a caliphate. That's what Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, the Islamic State, has been all about. Let's move away into some more current issues. So I wanted to mention and get your feedback. We have sanctuary cities here in the state of California and across the country. And I mentioned the other day, these sanctuary cities as well as states have stopped the deportation of individuals coming to the United States from terrorist sponsoring nations. And I wanted you, as a former DHS officer and intelligence expert in this area, is there anything that we can do here in California and others can do across the country to begin to fight back and work with, I don't know if it would be the federal government or who exactly we can work with, to cause these sanctuary cities to work with the federal government and deport these individuals that are coming across the border illegally, that are from these terrorist sponsoring countries. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, if I lived in one of the little towns in the southern San Joaquin, which I'm guessing is where the footprint of your program is mostly.
I'm broadcasting out of Bakersfield, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I lived in one of the towns in that part of the state, in that part of the valley, and I decided I was listening to the program and I wanted to become more involved. Then one of the first things I would do is start with the local law enforcement. I mean, either your sheriff or your actual police, and find out exactly what their policy is regarding sanctuary city, and or whether or not they're cooperating with ICE, because ICE is the branch of the federal government that's charged with enforcing immigration law inside the border.
Right.
Not outside the border like maybe the FBI, but inside. That's ICE. And so they're the first, they're the branch of law enforcement within the federal government that has that responsibility. And the way it's supposed to work is they're supposed to partner with state and local law enforcement, like a transmission. You know, one gear connects to the other. But the way the opposition party, the Democratic Party, has structured it, it's like they've taken the transmission out of gear. And it's impossible for the power to get the front end of the car to the back because they've taken it out of gear. So I would start there.
I have. I've interviewed Sheriff Youngblood. I don't know what other people are doing in other cities and towns up and down the state of California, which the state of California is a sanctuary state, what they're doing in other cities and states, but in talking to in interviewing the Sheriff, Donnie Youngblood, on this broadcast with regards to what he's doing. He just came out and was completely honest and transparent and said he walks right up to the line. But he was told by former Governor Jerry Brown and our current governor, Gavin Newsom, that he will be literally put in jail if he crosses the line. But he goes right up to it and does his best to try to provide as much help and support to ICE officials as possible without getting himself or making himself a target by the Democratic leadership here in California. It's really tough.
Do you know what it sounds like?
What
you're talking, the situation? See something, say nothing.
Right, your book.
It's exactly what happened, because this, what I call national security meltdown, started inside the branches, the agencies in the federal government that had to do with law enforcement. You see, it's the law enforcement arena is the one that's most corrupt and needs the most repair. You think about it. Who are the people that are going after President Trump? Are they social workers? Are they local politicians? Are they pastors and rabbis? No, they're law enforcement officers. You're talking DOJ, FBI, working together. They're cops, lawyers and cops that are going after President Trump. That tells you that is the last stronghold of corruption in our federal government. Well, the reason why, as you mentioned, I was there from the very first day, that my story is so important, is because I saw it and survived it. It started inside the federal government and is saturated through the rest of the government structure down through state and local. And when elected officials tell a law enforcement officer, we will throw you in jail if you simply do your job, that's what you call the whistleblower. When somebody says, no, I am going to do my job, go ahead and put me in jail. You do what you're going to do, and I will do what I have to do as a law enforcement officer. And you just described what it was like living inside the nuclear reactor when all of this stuff started happening.
Under the Obama administration.
That's right.
Right. Well, our Sheriff Youngblood, stands with the president. In fact, he was among those sheriffs here in California and other law enforcement personnel that was invited to be with the president when he came to California and was checking out, the border there between the state of California, the U.S. and Mexico. And I brought him on the broadcast to share out his own experience. And it was really interesting, and I encourage everybody to go back and listen to that broadcast. Let's change gears because I know I can't keep you all afternoon. I wanted to, as someone that's deeply concerned about our relationship with Israel, our most important strategic ally in the Middle East, and perhaps more broadly in the world today, in terms of the intelligence, the information sharing and the kinds of help they give us in terms of our military technological support. I wanted to share, I've talked about this on the broadcast already this week, but I wanted to get your thoughts. Rashida Tlaib, the representative from Michigan, said, quote, "There's always kind of a calming feeling when I think of the Holocaust and the tragedy of the Holocaust, and the fact that it was my ancestors, Palestinians, who lost their land, and some lost their lives, their livelihood, their human dignity, their existence, in many ways have been wiped out, and some lost their passports." I wanted to have you to respond to a few different things. First of all, I see in that statement not just anti-Semitism, but an effort to delegitimize the state of Israel. I also see it as a way to play i.e. for Muslims in America, to play the victim card. And it's in my mind, it's anti-Semitic, and I'd like you to speak to that. It's delegitimizing Israel, it's playing the victim card, but it's also revisionist history. It's historical revisionism. So can we talk about those 4 issue areas with respect to her statement, please?
Sure.
And let's begin with anti-Semitism. We have leaders. Now, I just spoke to Director Dobby from the ZOA in Jerusalem yesterday. And I told him that there were Jewish leaders here in the United States that didn't see that she was necessarily being anti-Semitic, but just rewriting history. I disagree with that position, and so did the director of the ZOA in Israel. Your thoughts, Mr. Haney?
Well, boy, that's a tangled ball of string with Talib, because on the one hand, she said she had a warm feeling, calm feeling because of the noble actions of her fellow Palestinians who were helping the Jews post the Holocaust, the way she put it, post the tragedy and the horrific persecution of Jews in the world at that time. That was her ancestors that provided them in many ways, but that's not true at all.
No.
Now, there's always exceptions on the personal level. I'm not saying there wasn't one single Palestinian person that lived in that part of the Middle East at the time, because it wasn't even called Palestine then. It was part of the Turkish Empire, that would have helped the Jewish people. But on the whole, it was exactly the opposite.
Yes.
And then what is really strange about it is after she got done talking about the calm feeling that she had, she turned around and said that this noble behavior came with the price of their own human dignity and that it was forced on them. So wait a minute. Which one was it? Did you stand up and volunteer to help protect the Jewish people, or was it forced on you and you lost your dignity? So even in that short paragraph, she completely contradicted herself. And that's what happens when you are confused about history, isn't it? You start to create this narrative, and then you bump into the reality of history, and you find yourself making absurd statements like that, where on the one hand she's claiming they stood up and helped the Jewish people, and on the other hand she's saying that they did it, it was forced on them and they lost everything. Well, they really lost everything in 1948 when they sided with the Arab nations, who came in and said, we're going to drive these Jewish people into the sea. We're going to courage, that's the verb, courage. We're going to push them into the sea. Just get out of the way. Go with your families in Jordan or Lebanon or Egypt or somewhere else and wait till we're done.
Right.
Then come on back and everything will be fine. Well, they lost. They lost the war,
right.
And those people never were able to come back again. The ones that stayed, their descendants are still citizens of Israel to this day.
Right, and there's equality there. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate what Mr. Haney is saying, because during the Ottoman Empire, this was when the Turks were in control, and after the British took control after the end of World War I, and the Turks, the Ottoman Empire that fought with the Germans during the war, they lost, and so the British were given control of this area that is today Israel, and of course what is part of the Gaza Strip. I noticed you used the word Palestine. I don't, ladies and gentlemen, I don't accept or acknowledge that there's any kind of Palestinian state. There's Israel and there are territories. And the Gaza Strip, which of course Israel unilaterally exited, literally picked up every man, woman, and child and had to take those that had died and were in cemeteries. They had to literally unearth those individuals. They had to take the synagogues. Everything had to be moved out of the Gaza Strip. And if you're a Christian, you read the Old Testament, or if you're a Jew, you read the Torah. Gaza has always had a continual Jewish presence since biblical times. Gaza was part of Israel's or the Jewish people's ancestral home. It was part of that area that under the Holy Scriptures God had given to the Jewish people. So there's always been a Jewish presence there, and there's so much there that has been Jewish. And so they had to take all that and move it out in 2005 under the pressure of U.S. leadership and other governments around the globe. But getting back to the point about the Palestinians were operating under the leadership of their Islamic spiritual leader, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who sided with the Nazis and literally met with the likes of Adolf Hitler and Heinrich Himmler. So you are you saying then, based on your statement, Mr. Haney, that Tlaib, Representative Tlaib's statement was certainly anti-Semitic, as well as revisionist history?
Both.
Yes, I agree. Okay.
It's a Holocaust. It's a confused, upside down and backwards version of history. I remember when the ceremony was held last year, I believe it was. I lost track of time a little bit, when they dedicated the site of the new embassy in Jerusalem.
Yes.
And it was on the radio. I was in Texas driving, and I listened to it. And a rabbi came his turn to speak, and he said something that was so profound and so simple. Because right at the time when they were doing the dedication ceremony, the Hamas was shooting rockets from Gaza into Israel, literally at the same time. Mm-hmm. And the rabbi, instead of shaking his fist and ranting and raving about the Palestinians or the Hamas people, he simply said, you know, that without truth there is no peace. And it really struck me. There's never going to be peace on their side of the equation as long as they refuse to acknowledge what happened in history.
Right.
You know, and they talk about justice. It's the same with justice. Without truth, there is no justice.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely correct.
No truth, no peace, no truth, no justice. And yet, they cannot come to terms with the reality of what happened in history. They have actually had numerous opportunities to live side by side. And they, as Golda Meir, I believe it was, said, they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And they've been missing opportunities ever since the modern times when Israel was founded, initially authorized by the UN in November of 1947, and then declared officially by David Ben-Gurion in May 14th, I believe, of 1948.
Right.
And they were immediately attacked at that point, and it's been more or less an ongoing battle ever since then. That's the true history of it.
Well, I think it's important that people understand that even prior to Israel's statehood, there were massacres of Jews. I'm thinking, ladies and gentlemen, of the Hebron massacre in 1929. I'm thinking of other massacres and incidences in which Jewish people were lynched, where families were killed in their beds, sleeping at night. The same kind of thing that was going on before Israel even became a state during the British mandatory period, when the British controlled it from 1917, 1918 to the end of 1948. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, you need to be aware of the fact that the British and the French and the Germans and the Italians, they provided independence to the Muslim Arab entities. They literally set up and drew lines granting them statehood. But they left the Jews who had supported the Allies in World War II, that were not opposing the Allies, but many, many, many Jewish lives here in the United States fought to end Nazi occupation of Europe and the Nazi global threat, and to end the threat of Imperial Japan. So when you think about the number of Jews who gave their lives supporting the Allied effort in World War II, while Muslim Arabs were killing Jews, some of whom managed to escape the ovens and the gas chambers of Germany and Eastern Europe. It's incredible. I guess it was hard for me to wrap my head around the fact, Mr. Haney, that there were leaders here in this country, including the House Majority Leader, Steny Hoyer, who didn't believe and said publicly, nationally, that he didn't think Rashida Tlaib was being anti-Semitic, because I don't know how you can think about an infant being shot in the head or thrown in an oven and have a calming feeling. I can't even relate to that. Can you?
Well, there's several more pieces that we can lay on the table of this big puzzle, and that is that once Israel was declared a state officially in May of 48, all of the Arab nations in the Middle East immediately deported all the Jews that were living inside their borders. Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, just the whole Middle East, Syria, they deported them overnight. Between 800,000 and 1 million were forced to leave behind their businesses, their property, all their possessions. They were allowed to take something like, equivalent of maybe $50, $100, $200 out with them, and had to leave it all behind.
Well, there was
There was
a million, about 1 million, they say about approximately 900,000 Jews that fled Muslim countries even prior to 1948. I mean, Jews were oftentimes lynched, and they had to get their families out prior to statehood. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the New York Times from 1948, I have it in my archives, Mr. Haney. I purchased that, the New York Times, as the newspaper of record for the United States, purchased one of the papers from 1948, and it has inside the paper one of the headlines pointing to the number of Jews that left each and every Muslim Arab country to try to escape into Israel before they were killed. It was a nightmare, and yet we never hear about Jewish refugees, but for some reason we continue to hear about Muslim Arab refugees, so-called Palestinians, that came from Muslim Arab countries looking for work during the British Mandatory period. Mr. Haney, I'll give you the last word. What do you think? The president has said that these individuals and for example, Representative Omar should not be on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. If this continues, what course of action do you believe that the House majority leadership under the control of the Democrats, what do you think they should do with this ongoing anti-Semitism exhibited by Representatives Tlaib and Omar?
Well, it's a double-edged sword for them, and although it is extremely unpleasant to hear Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib spout off in public the way they do, there's one benefit from it. It's a kind of a gnarly benefit, but we're finding out exactly what they really believe.
Sure.
With no mask and no pretense. And we're also finding out, if you were ever to wonder, well, how could they just let this happen back there during the Second World War and the Holocaust? They would have done something. Well, look at the way the Democratic Party is behaving. They are not doing something. They have an opportunity to stand up for all the rights and all the diversity and all the equality and all the inclusion that they're always referring to, but they're not doing it. And before we go, I just want to mention one other thing regarding the designation of the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, President Trump has already stated during his campaign and all the way up to now that he favors it. And I believe that he does.
I do too.
And so far I have seen him follow through. I think that he will follow through on it because he has this pattern of making kind of a generic announcement, then letting the momentum build, and then making the official designation.
Yes.
But just to keep in mind that this whole process is like a transmission with all those gears meshing together. And the gears in this case for the designation of the Muslim Brotherhood include the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, the Department of State, the Department of the Treasury, plus the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative branch of the government. All of those 6 or 7 entities have to mesh together like gears in a transmission for any one of these policies to go forward. And now you can see why it hasn't happened in the past. because any one of those agencies under the previous administration, all they had to do is to refuse to cooperate, refuse to mesh with the rest, and it didn't happen. So if one branch like DOD or another branch like Department of Treasury puts up, resistance, and that's where President Trump comes in. He just has to say, you're going to do it.
Right.
Period. It's what I want you to do, you do it. It's within the law, it's policy, it's national security, we're going to do it. And just like with recognition of Jerusalem, a lot of opposition from those same agencies,
yes.
DOD, DOS, so on. But when he said, let's do it, and he said, we're going to do it, they fell in line. And virtually none of the dire predictions that were supposed to happen actually came true.
That's
and it would
correct.
be the same with the Muslim Brotherhood. The last thing I wanted, before I forget, why don't we try that? We wouldn't have to fire a single shot, not a single shot, or drop a single bomb anywhere in the world to designate the Muslim Brotherhood. Why don't we try that?
I agree.
Recognize the nature of the threat that's standing right in front of us and do it without any kind of, shooting or bombing at all.
Yes.
Now, isn't that the way to go about it?
Certainly.
Start with it?
Certainly, sir. Thank you so much for coming on the broadcast today. I really appreciate your time, and I so enjoyed meeting you and talking with you when you were here speaking at Afro America. And once again, I just thoroughly enjoyed our discussion. I appreciate it. Hope you will come back on the broadcast, sir.
I'd love to after I get back, or even live from
ladies and gentlemen, yes, I would love it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just give you a bit of a something to look forward to. This former DHS officer is going to Israel, and if you don't mind, I would love to interview you while you're in Israel, and let's talk about that off air. But I think it'd be fabulous to maybe spend 5 or 10 minutes talking to you each and every day. But we'll talk about that after air. But I would absolutely love that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You have a blessed evening. Thank you, sir.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to go to a break. We've got to pay the bills. All those long distance calls that I make to the Middle East and all over the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Thank you for listening.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on. I am a warrior and this is my song. My eyes are steel and my gaze is long. I am a warrior and this is my song.
I want to tell you about a place I love to go, Frugatti's Italian Restaurant. Very few locations here provide seating outside in front of a fabulous water fountain with an atmosphere that is reminiscent to me of eating outdoors in Venice. This is real Italian food by real Italians. And what makes it even more so is owner Ralph Frugoletti, who nearly a quarter century ago brought a wood fire oven from Milan, Italy to make, like his mother, fresh homemade bread and pizzas. Moreover, Frugatti's Restaurant offers you not only the very best in Southern Italian cooking, even importing the finest ingredients for authentic Italian food, including a fitness menu. After all, Ralph has represented the United States and Italy, competing in the Master Championship Games. He knows all the right food for good fitness, so check out the menu. After today's broadcast, run over to Frugatti's Italian Restaurant and Catering at 600 Coffee Road here in Bakersfield. And after a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday service, stop into Frugatti's for a great lunch. I'll see you there, and tell Mr. Ralph Frugoletti that Denice sent you. Salute. Bon appetito.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we are with Barb Reynolds Wallstrom today. She is the owner and operator serving the entire Kern County area. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you, Denise.
You've been at the top of your game in terms of legal matters for many, many years. And I want you to tell the audience today, what is the difference between a legal document assistant to pro per litigants as opposed to a paralegal? What's the difference?
A legal document assistant such as I has been involved with the legal work for many years, as a matter of fact, decades, and I feel quite competent and capable of helping people throughout Kern County for legal needs that they really need assistance with
Sure.
and can't afford an attorney.
Right.
So I'm here in Bakersfield 3 and 4 times a week. If people need me, they can call me. If they can't get to me, and why is that? Because people have to work during the day. The clients I serve are working people.
And
There
you
are a lot
go
of
to
blue
Shafter
collars.
and Walser, and you're
Absolutely.
there in Tehachapi.
I'll go there.
You're just everywhere.
I'm everywhere. And Denise, I'm not tied to a 9-to-5 environment.
Yeah.
I go where my clients need me at whatever hour. I love doing that, and they can call me. I will come to them. They can call me at whatever hour aside from 9 to 5 because people need answers and they need them quickly. They're in a high state of anxiety when they call to begin
Yes.
with. So they need someone that understands that once they get off from work, they might have a question. And I'm going to be there to answer that question. So call me.
Barb Reynolds Wallstrom is so passionate about what she does. She loves it. She's been in the business for decades, and she's the gal you want to call. You help people handle their adoptions, right?
Adoptions,
And bankruptcy.
bankruptcies, also divorces, unlawfully tainters, which are evictions, conservatorships, guardianships, living trusts. I pretty much run the gamut after 47 years.
Wow.
So
How do
yeah.
people reach you, Barb? What
They
do
can contact me at area code 661-805-3306.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to call Tehachapi Court Services today. Talk to Barb. She can be reached at 661-805-3306. It's there on the screen. Give her a call. She will work with you hand in glove,
right.
hand in glove to
I
take.
walk every step of the way with my clients.
Excellent. She'll work with you and get the job done. Thank you so much,
You're
Barb, for
welcome.
coming
Thank
in
you.
and talking about Tehachapi Court Services, 661-805-3306. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Denise Gary Show. I wanted to share this with you yesterday because we were interviewing Director Dobby who was there in Jerusalem, Israel. And but we ran out of time. And we also had our very special guest, Barb Reynolds Wallstrom, who, of course, is the president of Tehachapi Court Services. And ladies and gentlemen, you want to give her a call. And have her help you as a paralegal. But I didn't get to share this out. So yesterday, the 15th, there were 10,000 Arab Muslims, quote unquote, Palestinians, Muslim Arabs rioting at the Israel-Gaza border. They were rioting. And when they riot, that means that not the entire army, but I'm talking about IDF personnel, Israeli Defense Force personnel. The Israeli Defense Forces is the military, and they have to get right up there on the border because these 10,000 Muslim Arabs there, and what they do, and Director Dobby mentioned this, they have kites that they'll use things that look like children's toys to try to attract children to come out and get themselves burned or burned alive. They'll use things that look like something for children just in case some child doesn't know what they're doing. We'll run out there and try to, get this balloon that's about ready to land and explode, or an incendiary kite or whatever. So just wanted you to know that yesterday, 10,000 Muslim Arabs, Palestinians rioted along the border, and they were, using burning tires and setting things on fire and igniting these arson balloons. And I wanted to mention that and tell you something that Rashida Tlaib tweeted out. She says, "When will the world stop dehumanizing our Palestinian people?" Because, she considers herself, quote unquote, a Palestinian, who just want to be free. I'd like to say this to Rashida Tlaib and any Muslim American that's listening to this broadcast, anybody that says they're a Palestinian. I want to ask you, why do you think you're not free? If you're living in the United States, you're free. If you're living in any country, including Israel, you're free. The only country a Muslim Arab is not free in is a Muslim Arab country. Because there are dictatorships throughout the Muslim Arab world, and they arrest the opposition. They target the opposition for persecution. But if you're a Muslim Arab in Israel, you can get out there and protest every day. You can get help in an Israeli hospital because there are Muslim doctors there. There are Muslim Arab doctors, nurses, teachers, bus drivers, taxi drivers, restaurant workers, members of the Knesset, Israel's legislative branch of government. So I don't understand Rashida Tlaib misinforming the entire country of Americans, saying, when will the world stop dehumanizing our Palestinian people? Well, maybe they look at Palestinian people and they think about all the money that we have sent to the Muslim Arab Palestinian people and think they're spending it on buying tires and burning tires and throwing bombs and building rockets and building missiles and teaching their children the art of war. I mean, literally, they teach their children how to knife somebody to death, how to use a gun, how to shoot. I don't understand it. I don't know how Rashida Tlaib can talk about gun control here in the United States of America when there's no gun control in any area controlled by any Palestinian Muslim Arab. There's no gun control. People carry guns openly, openly in places like the Gaza Strip. So I don't, I don't even understand that. Rashida Tlaib went on in her tweet to say, our Palestinian people just want to be free. Well, they're free in Israel. If they're an Israeli citizen, they can live the good life. They can attend a university and become a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, whatever they want to be. They have total freedom. Headlines like this is Rashida Tlaib talking in her tweet. Headlines like this and framing. So she's talking about how the New York Times put a headline up about Gaza militants. New York Times won't even call them terrorists. They say Gaza militants fire these rockets into Israel. She says headlines like this, and she has the New York Times headline, and framing it in this way just feeds into the continued lack of responsibility on Israel, who unjustly oppresses and targets Palestinian children and families. Wow. Is she delusional? I want to know. I would like to know how Israel is oppressing and targeting Palestinian children. Because a Palestinian child that can't maybe get into a hospital in the Gaza Strip, Israel, every day, lets in people from the Gaza Strip, even though they know they could be a terrorist, even though they know they could be carrying a bomb, even though they know that they could maybe, inside Israel, kill Israeli children who are Jewish. Israel allows people to come into their more modern, sophisticated hospitals and get the kind of care and surgery or medicine that they need. How is that oppressing and targeting Palestinian children? I would like to know that. I would like to know how it's oppressing and targeting Palestinian children when Israel sends tons of food and medicine and everything else into the Gaza Strip and into areas of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, when those people turn around and terrorize innocent Jewish families. I'd like to know that. I'd like to understand that. Why? Because there's a checkpoint between a Palestinian city and Israeli city. There has to be. Because there are terrorist attacks. There's an average of a terrorist attack every day in Israel, or a terrorist attack that's been prevented. Israel has to protect its people. That's their responsibility. And so if there has to be a checkpoint, then there has to be a checkpoint. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to take another commercial break. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so thrilled I've got the owner of Sculpt 365 Fitness here with me today, Craig Jansen, Navy veteran. Craig, tell the audience out there why everybody in town needs to come over here and join.
Well, Sculpt 365 is a 24-hour club, so we never close, unlike a lot of other clubs here in town. Additionally, our club is always super clean, and one of the things that you're going to find here is a different environment where we strive to give you a VIP experience here. So we want to get to know you, we want to know your story, we want to know about you and how we can help you succeed and meet all of your fitness goals.
Wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. Come on down to Sculpt 365 Fitness. You're located right here on Brim Hall. Tell us your other location.
We have another location up in Tehachapi. And then our third location here in town is also located over on Chester and Columbus in the Food Mac Shopping Center.
Thank you so much, Craig. You have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
President Trump has correctly stated that economic security is national security, and in the Tehachapi Mountains of Kern County resides a United States defense contractor, HANEY Products. Here is the Silicon Valley of the aerospace industry, right here in East Kern. HANEY Products is a forward-leaning manufacturer and distributor of hardware sold to major defense and aerospace companies. We're talking about Boeing, Lockheed Martin, United Technologies, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon General Electric, and on the list goes, as well as to every United States ally worldwide, including Israel, America's most important strategic ally in the Middle East. And for everything that flies, HANEY Products is providing the parts. And with me today is the president of HANEY Products, Scott Baker. Hi, Scott.
How you doing?
Scott, tell us why you believe this corner of Kern County is the hub of the aerospace industry.
Well, this portion of Southern California here out in the Antelope Valley, it contains, some of the most cutting-edge technology going on in aviation today. We have some of the UCAS programs with unmanned technologies going on. We have Edwards Air Force Base out here who's doing continual testing in their area. We have the Naval Weapons Station up there at China Lake doing some fantastic cutting-edge stuff, cruise missile technology, and those things are going on. We have Scale Composites locally doing a lot of composite technology, which is new. We have SpaceX, which is a private one, putting a private entity putting things into space now. This area is the growth center for aviation's future, and this is the area I think that as a nation we need to be concentrating some of our effort and taking this technology. And as we all know, with the space program from Apollo years ago, out of these technologies, we, the private sector, are going to reap some of the benefits of that.
Thank you, Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Baker, president of HANEY Products.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to see this clip. Again, thinking about Rashida Tlaib and her comments, maybe if Palestinians showed a little bit of humanity, people might cut them some slack. But here are Palestinians. These are Muslim Arabs, Palestinians in the Gaza Strip area celebrating killing innocent Israelis and injuring many more in their rocket attacks that first weekend in this month. Over 700 rockets. Think about 700 rockets landing in your community. Think about 700 rockets landing in and around your neighborhood. Think about 700 rockets landing on places like your school, your church, your house. I want you to think about 700 rockets hitting your community. And then I want you to think about what the Israelis went through that first weekend in May. Here are Palestinians celebrating those rocket attacks. Let's play it.
والشمال
Ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Those are Palestinians hoping and praying to Allah, the religion of peace, that more Israelis, more Jewish children, more Jewish mothers and fathers will be killed in Israel. And those lights in the sky, those were rockets. Those were rockets being shot all night long over